I am old now, but I still hear his name in every wind. Our village of Umuchi was small, but it carried enormous pride inside. Emeka and Chike grew up running those red paths like one soul. They shared one bowl of food and called each other brother always. They cut their thumbs and swore on blood to remain brothers forever. Emeka grew into the kind of man who made the whole village proud. He farmed harder than anyone and never asked for anything in return. But Chike had hungry eyes that were never satisfied with enough. He watched Emeka receive praise and smiled, but his heart was rotting. The village chief Igwe Obura was old and had no surviving sons. He summoned Emeka and said, "You are the son I never had." Emeka knelt and accepted with humility while all of Umuchi watched. Chike stood at the back of the crowd with arms folded tight. He was smiling, but behind that smile, something very dark had begun. One night Chike walked to the compound of a powerful outside trader. He whispered things about Emeka and took coins across the table. For a small pouch of coins, he sold everything they had built. The village woke that morning, not knowing what had been set moving. Strangers arrived at the village gates with papers and pointed fingers. They pointed at Emeka and read from a paper he had never seen. He searched the crowd for Chike, looking for the one who knew him. Chike was there at the edge of the crowd, looking at the ground. I watched Emeka's face change the moment he understood who did this. They led him away from everything he had ever built and loved. He looked back once at Chike, and Chike could not meet his eyes. The square emptied, and Chike stood alone in all that silence. Igwe Obura sat in his throne and did not speak for 3 days. Within a month, Chike moved into a bigger compound with new clothes. But Umuchi knew, and Umuchi does not forget what it knows. The compound was large, but no one came to sit inside it. Emeka's mother sat at the door every evening, waiting for her son. One evening, she walked to Chike's gate and stood there without speaking. Chike came to the gate, and the two of them just stood there. She did not curse him, she only said, "Where is my son?" He closed the gate, and I never respected another man less in my life. Umuchi gathered every night by fire, but Chike was never invited anymore. Then Igwe Obura rose from his throne and addressed the whole village. He pointed at Chike and said, "This man has no name here anymore." One by one, every person in Umuchi turned their back on him. He left Umuchi that same evening with only a cloth on his back. No one called after him, and that silence was its own verdict. 3 years passed in Umuchi like a slow and heavy harmattan season. Then one harmattan morning, a figure appeared on the road to Umuchi. The children saw him first and ran back to call their mothers. It was Chike, and he had aged 10 years and only 3. He went straight to Igwe Obura and fell to his knees at the door. He wept and confessed everything, and the chief listened without moving once. When Chike finished, the chief said, "Emeka is not coming back." Emeka had died in a strange place, far from everything he loved. His hut had stood empty for 3 years, with his name still on it. When his mother was told, she sat in the dust and did not rise. Umuchi mourned for 7 days for a man they had failed to protect. Chike sat at the very back of the mourning crowd, completely alone. He cried harder than any man there, and no one comforted him at all. After the funeral, he went to Emeka's hut and pressed his hand on the wall. Then he walked into the forest, and Umuchi never saw him again. Their names were still carved into the old Iroko tree together. One name carved in hope, and one in shame side by side. I have told this story every year, so Umuchi will never forget what it costs. Greed killed no sword that night, but greed killed everything that mattered.